Welcome back to Ronnie's Refundable Reviews. Haven't been here in a hot minute, sorry about that. Been a bit busy, but I'm back. And today I've got 3 movies for you. Next week I'll have 3 albums for you because that's how the cookie crumbles. Stay tuned for that. The first of the 3 movies today will be the latest entry in the Mission Impossible franchise. Now, I have a bit of a complicated relationship with this series. I used to watch these movies all the time as a kid. I'm particularly nostalgic for the original and Ghost Protocol, weirdly. Many vague memories of Ethan Hunt doing his Ethan stunts, but I've recently watched a few to refresh my memory. I watched the original MI, and I loved it a lot. I'm not going to give a full review for these, but it's a 9 out of 10. Doesn't get much better than that. I also recently, by recently I mean a year and a half ago, watched Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Part 1, and I hate that movie. Genuinely, I think it's pretty terrible. Very bad writing, directing, everything. I gave it a 3 out of 10.
Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning.
So needless to say, I didn't have high expectations for this new one, but I know the greatness that this franchise can achieve with the right vision. So how did this new one stack up? I'm happy to say my opinion is much closer to a 9 out of 10 than that 3 out of 10.
When that clock runs out in 72 hours, that will be your responsibility.
This movie is one revolving around Ethan Hunt attempting to stop the world from being taken over by an AI called the Entity. And to do this, he must find a key and put the key through the hole and do some other stuff that involves submarines, planes, and threats of nuclear warfare. Now, what did I think of it? This movie pleasantly surprised me. I usually don't do this, but I'm gonna reveal my score now. Which is that, for me, the new Mission Impossible movie, Final Reckoning, is a 7 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, it's basically the same as the last one, and the one before it, and all these Mission Impossible movies. The only surface-level difference between each of these movies is the mounting lore they have to explain to a casual audience. This one being the worst case. The first 20 minutes were basically a goddamn slideshow or trailer recap of the last 800 Mission Impossible movies. It was a bit of a slog. But anyways, back to my point. Once the movie got past that dull slideshow of an opening, and we got into the actual meat of the movie, I was actually having a great time. I really thought for a second that I was too harsh on the previous from how much I was liking this. But once I got to that submarine scene, that incredible submarine scene, I knew I was actually right the whole time. The last movie did suck, and this one does rock. So how did I give this a 7 out of 10 when I gave the last MI a 3 out of 10? If on the surface level, it's all the same crap. Well, the answer is below the surface. The fact is, this is just a better made film, in my opinion. The direction was simply more gripping. My opinion on these last 2 movies boiled down to the bare essentials, is that in Dead Reckoning, the action set pieces feel like a band-aid slapped onto a terribly bruised story. While in this one, the action felt like it was a vital organ living to help the overall story, which was alive and healthy. I also just felt this movie more. There was clearly more effort put into emotional weight and stakes of the story. All these movies are about saving the world, and we're also desensitized to that concept as an audience. But in this movie, I actually felt the stakes of it. The whole sequence cutting between the military room grappling with the decision of launching nukes, and our crew trying to disarm bombs and stuff while Simon Pegg is basically dying, before cutting to Tom Cruise jumping between planes, really cemented this for me. Simon Pegg's performance actually got me and gave me goosebumps, like I was actually worried for his character. That kind of attention to emotion and stakes is pretty rare for these dumb action flicks. And the best thing is that they could cut from those sweaty boardroom meetings immediately to the most cartoonish and insane action scene ever, and it still somehow works. The intense submarine spy thriller moment was really gripping and amazing, but the second huge moment, being the plane scene, was amazing in a very different way. Spoilers ahead, but watching the big bad villain of all these movies get his arm broken like that was perfect. It looked so dumb and bad, but it was still satisfying and great for the moment. And then having a cool villain one-liner before jumping out and splitting his face on a plane wing.
Only one of us has a parachute! Good luck!
That moment was hilarious in the dumbest and most cartoony way, and it was great. At the end of the day, this movie is very dumb and convoluted and trying to do too much, but it's also entertaining and fun, and most importantly, actually well made. Like, seriously well directed. I really liked it. 7 out of 10.
The Final Reckoning is pure adrenaline-pumping insanity. It's jaw-dropping, nerve-shredding, jaw-shredding, nerve-dropping.
Next up is the newest DC movie and the beginning to James Gunn's new DC universe, Superman. I really enjoyed this movie as well. This is uncompromising nerdiness. I'm sure there was a little bit of compromise, it's still a big studio movie, but still, I feel Gunn's vision really pulled through. This is a movie that skips past Superman's origin and throws us into a heroic battle between Superman and Lex Luthor, and the political landscape and warfare that Clark finds himself at the center of. I'm not a huge Superman buff, but it feels like this movie is exactly what Superman needs to be. I just love the direction they took. There are plenty of corny one-liners that, out of context, would be seen as just that, corny. But that's what Superman needs to be. He's pure of heart and confident in himself and his humanity. He doesn't care if he looks a fool, as long as he does good. That speech about being human at the end was absolutely a necessary refresher for the public of what this character is.
I'm as human as anyone.
The only real negative to some of those speeches was the very cliché, sappy piano music. Just wasn't for me. At the same time, maybe it was necessary for a wide audience to feel that emotion, but I just rarely am not taken out of these emotional moments when the score is so manipulative and cheesy. But anyways, the movie was also really hilarious. This movie features a side plot of a group called the Justice Gang, featuring Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and Green Lantern wielder Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner was such a James Gunn character. He fit right in, and he was so perfect for this movie. The little visual gags of green middle fingers floating across during certain action scenes were great. Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen was hilarious, and so was his subplot with Evie, Lex Luthor's girlfriend, who was actually in love with Jimmy Olsen. She was a great character in general. Her big reveal was pretty epic if you've seen it. But really, Beck Bennett as Steve really stole the show for me. His little moments in the aircraft near the end worrying about not having a seat were great. That got a really big theater laugh. The theater was super packed, it was sick. Anyways, what really got me was that in the opening scene for Steve, instead of having the typical douchey guy one-liners, they had him criticizing Clark's grammar and writing, like his prose, like he's talking about his usage of adverbs. It's just really cracked me up.
Hey, what do you got against adverbs, Kent? How are we supposed to know how we feel when we read this?
But because it's James Gunn, the guy who made a superhero movie about raccoon torture, this movie also knows when to get a little dark with it. Lex Luthor's pocket dimension scenes were really effective. The subversion in the Russian roulette moment was really perfect and brutal. Just imagining being trapped in there was really horrifying. I honestly think the political stuff was decently well handled. I've seen it being criticized, but it didn't affect my viewing. The Tucker Carlson parody character was great, so was the dude from Triangle of Sadness as the president of that made-up country. I also liked the monkeys typing on the internet gag. The commentary on war, albeit, felt a little brushed to the side, but it was also poignant in a way, and I don't know. I'm not an expert on how to talk about politics in a Superman movie, but to me, I felt like it was handled alright. Back to dumb comic talk now. I loved the visuals. The costumes were perfect. Everybody already knows that, though. I feel like the current audience all agrees that the big, bright spandex outfits are better than the over-designed crap that we've been used to.
The problem with the trunks is that they look kind of silly. What if the point is that they look a little silly? He doesn't want to look cool.
The graphics and CGI were also some of the best I've ever seen. But what really stood out to me was the set design and world building. I love how trapped in time this movie feels. They have phones and modern tech, but the whole aesthetic palette was so vintage and cartoony. It really felt like the OG animated series in a way, just at a modern time. I love the design of the Daily Bugle and the sleek and simple technology shown in Lex's tower. The movie just looked great on pretty much every level. Some of the complicated nanotech and portal stuff look a little muddy, like most of these superhero movies do, but it didn't affect the look too much. It's just a well-made movie. I loved it, and I'm giving Superman an 8 out of 10.
Gotta get back to the fray.
Rated PG-13. Only in theaters July 11th.
Next up, I've got a Ronny review first. this being the first documentary I've reviewed, and that documentary is Pee-wee as himself, the fairly recent look into the late great Paul Reubens' personal life, the man behind Pee-wee Herman. And I have to say, they captured him pretty beautifully.
I'm gonna leave out the part where we did enormous amounts of drugs. I didn't.
I'll just start by mentioning the production was unbelievable. The amount of footage and archival documentation that was available was truly a marvel. Slowly learning how much of a collector and hoarder Paul was, it starts to make sense how these hours and hours of his life were sitting in storage. It's an aspect that wasn't necessarily explored, but could be interpreted in so many ways as to how his passion for collecting relates to his inner self. He just seems like such a true appreciator of art and a man who is overstuffed with love and creativity. Anyways, I'm supposed to be talking about the production. The music was also really great. John Bryan is an incredible composer and he continues to excel in this. It's very subtle and perfectly ingrained into the emotional experience of the editing and storytelling. Just a very nice score. Beautiful piano compositions. The editing in general was pretty much perfect. The moments of cutting away from footage with an auditory echo and cut to black could end up feeling cliche, but it felt appropriate for the mountains of interesting material in Paul's life. It just seems so daunting to me to have to condense such a huge story into these little segments and add in the appropriate archival footage, but they really executed that perfectly. The way each talking point leads to the next is riveting and had me hooked consistently. It's really, really fascinating and satisfying to see how every little detail mentioned about his life and his college experience and comedic career form little pieces that puzzle together to create the Pee-wee character. It's so magical and so clearly presented. One of the most professional and cleanly made documentaries I've ever seen. Finally, what really makes this doc special is Paul himself. Honestly, he's gotta be literally the most perfect subject for a documentary. He's such an interesting character with so much depth. The fact that he's so anonymous and private and flighty makes for some very unique storytelling. He's an amazing speaker in general, and the little moments that they left in of him absolutely messing with the crew and the director, and him bickering were amazing. He loves to play around with his answer and switch up whether or not he's being himself or playing a joke.
Really? If you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. No, I don't really think that. All right, maybe I do think that a little bit. No, I don't. I'm kidding. Or am I? I don't know. I don't know if I'm kidding. I know. But you don't.
It's like he's in full control of everything he says and portrays about himself, and yet there's a little shadow of insecurity or loss of control inside him that becomes more clear and understandable as the doc continues. There's something so mysteriously mature about his childish nature, and something so childish about his maturity. He's very quirky and funny, but he's also very complicated and puzzling. This is all wrapped up perfectly by the end of part 2 of this nearly 3.5-hour experience. Paul can easily be understood as a quite difficult person to work with. His antics in the first part are hilarious, but in the second part, you really empathize with the director for his frustration with Paul as the subject. But as the doc is really drawing to a close and his mask really slips all the way off, it's made so clear exactly why he is the way he is. He's had some of the hardest public struggles of any celebrity, and the weight of that struggle is really cemented to the audience by the end. His last speech made me incredibly emotional. It made me sad and it was hard to hear, but it was also inspirational and beautiful. Even if he didn't cooperate fully, he really did wrap up the story in a perfect way, and the editing team and director helped polish that story lovingly. This really was something special, and I'm giving Pee-wee as himself a 9 out of 10.
So, you were saying...
Look, I changed my mind about all this stuff. I really, I don't feel like I'm gay anymore, so...
Well,
I hope the HBO people see these rushes and realize that you're keeping me from food and sleep.
Okay, but you kind of thought...
That's why you can't depend on anything I'm saying. All this gay stuff, I was sleep deprived, I didn't have food. If I said I was gay, I knew I could leave earlier.
So if you haven't noticed, I made a little 789 staircase with these ratings. That's it for this week. Check out Review Ronny on Instagram for more info on the show, and before I let you listeners go, it's time for Ronny's Joke of the Week. Hey, you notice how all 3 of these movies are about alter egos? Superman is pretending to be Clark Kent, Paul Reubens is pretending to be Pee-wee Herman, and Tom Cruise is pretending to be a likable person, am I right?
To receive this piece of metal the symbol of how much I've given to Scientology.
See you next time on Ronnie's Reckoning Reviews.
Hey, Ronnie. Ronnie?
Good reviews?
Fabulous reviews.
This is Ronnie. Make it good.
Suppose Ronnie could have been a
Reviewer.
It's Ronnie, all right.
Ronnie?
Reviews.
Fabulous reviews.
And this is the best review we got.